All right, people, get ready. Today we are doing it. We are talking about a topic, seeking approval, that I know millions of people across the world deal with. How do I know this? Well, I've been a psychologist for over 20 years, and I can tell you that this is one of the most common reasons that people seek out therapy. And you know what? Some people who actually deal with this problem, they never even make it into therapy for different reasons. Maybe they think there's a stigma if they go to therapy. Maybe they think, well, what will others think about that? Maybe they think if I go to therapy, it'll open up all this can of worms and I'll start talking about all these other problems. And I don't really want to do that. So maybe there's a little fear for some people who don't start therapy. But the point is that this is something that a lot of people deal with. If this is something that you deal with yourself, don't worry about that. Why? Because it's something that makes you human. It's something that makes you perfectly normal in so many ways. As young people, we are actually raised, I think, to seek the approval of our parents. We then go to school and then we are, I think, meant to sort of seek the approval of our teachers, certainly the principal, school administrators. So much of life actually is set up in a way where we are taught that seeking approval will lead to successful things. Even in job environments, in a work situation, often people are meant to seek the approval of their managers, their bosses. Here's where the problem comes in. Seeking approval, to some extent, to a point, may be a positive thing. And yet, seeking approval too much or for too long, or seeking approval in all of your voluntary relationships, in all of your personal relationships, that is where seeking approval can lead to a problem. Here's the thing: you seek approval too much from family members, you seek approval too much from romantic partners or from friends. What will happen? So, I can tell you that I'm a psychologist who likes to work from the position of people really often don't want someone just talking at them and just explaining to them what they need to do, how they need to change. I believe, and I include myself in that, how I learn the best is when someone helps me to think myself. Someone encourages me to self reflect for a moment, and I can try to come up with some answers myself. And then I can look at my answers and I can edit them, or someone, a professional, can help me edit them to figure out what is a better way for me to think about something. I like to give people who watch my videos on my Dr. Seth Psychologist channel the same credit, the same respect. That you yourselves have a lot of wisdom in you. And so, what you really sometimes can use is just some good questions that can help kind of get you thinking, get you self reflecting. So, here's the question: too much approval seeking. If you or anybody gets stuck in a pattern of seeking approval too much, what are some of the negative effects? What happens? How does a person feel if they get caught seeking approval too much? Well, I can tell you, after you've had a moment to think about it, that one of the things that comes from seeking approval too much is anxiety. Anxiety. If you find yourself seeking approval too much from too many people in your life or in too many situations, what it really means is that deep down, you have this undercurrent of anxiety boiling underneath the surface. And who knows? Maybe it's not even something that you're aware of. Maybe this undercurrent of anxiety related to seeking approval, maybe it comes out in other behaviors. Maybe the anxiety shows itself, manifests itself in other ways, ways that don't look anxious, but actually reflect the anxiety, are driven by the anxiety. So think about the behavior and think about the anxiety being the driver of that car. Is anxiety, if this is you, the driver of this car, causing you to engage in approval seeking behavior? It's possible. It is certainly possible. And so, one of the things I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through a few different examples of the ways that specific behaviors can show your approval seeking that can be toxic if it continues as a pattern. Okay. The first one, needing constant reassurance. Needing constant reassurance from someone or some people. One example would be thinking or asking people constantly, just too often, where you feel anxious and nervous and you need that reassurance. Are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? That is one of the most common manifestations of seeking approval, is needing constant reassurance. Why? Because just knowing in your heart of hearts, telling yourself that you are okay, that it was okay, that you can trust these relationships, that people will stay with you, that you are good enough in that job, for example. Any number of things that you may need reassurance for, you know it. You have faith in it. You feel confident about it. You have trust in yourself. You have trust in your circumstances. And more than anything, you believe that just independently on your own, you are okay. You are okay now, and that also you are going to be okay. So, what we see when we see somebody who has the seeking approval behavior of needing constant reassurance is deep down, there's often a fear that you might not be okay on your own. And in the moment, you look to others like a band-aid to put that band-aid on and tell yourself, okay, I'm good enough. I'm good enough, or this is good enough, or they're not mad at me. They're not going to leave. But you know what? It's just temporary. When you are at the point where you need constant reassurance from someone else, it's just temporary. It's just temporary. It never feels like enough reassurance. So, maybe an hour later or the next day, you find yourself back in the same situation, needing to look to someone to tell you it's going to be okay. Now, if this is you and you have this feeling, I want you to know that you don't have to feel like this forever. When you can actually take a step back and get honest about how you feel, that actually there is anxiety, real nervousness, anxiety, even fear that relates to this behavior, just getting honest with yourself is the first point. Okay. That is the first point in change. That is the first step, so to speak, in figuring out what to do about the problem. And that fear or that anxiety is not just related to this one specific behavior, but some of the other ones that I'm going to talk about now too. The next behavior I'm going to talk about is related. Avoiding being truly honest in your relationships. Being truly honest. So, like I said a moment ago, honest is the real start of actual change. Honesty sounds great. Honesty is a virtue, right? I'm sure there are millions of pillows that are needle pointed around the world with some cute expression about being honest and the value of it. Sounds great. And it is important. The problem is, it's actually very, very difficult sometimes to be honest. So, this behavior, avoiding being honest in conversations, is a very common approval seeking behavior. And it's something to watch out for if this is something you find yourself doing. The third factor I want to talk about is trying to be perfect, trying to achieve perfection in some way. For some, it may be about appearance. You may aspire to perfection when it comes to appearance, the way you dress, what your body looks like. It may be related to your face, and maybe you find yourself doing all kinds of things to your face to try to get more perfect. It may be your hair. It may be physical. It may be appearance related, is the overall point. For others, It may have to do with lovability. You may try to make yourself into the most lovable, desirable, appealing romantic partner. You may do all sorts of things to try to be the partner that you believe somebody wants you to be. At work, you may find yourself engaging in all sorts of behavior to always say yes, to always do what you think your manager or your boss wants you to do, wants you to say. You may try to appear perfect in meetings. With friends, you may go along sometimes with things that you don't really feel comfortable with. Why? Because you want to be the perfect friend. But all of these behaviors related to being perfect are really ultimately about seeking approval. And again, why do we seek approval? Because deep down, we tell ourselves that we are not okay or good enough without the approval of someone or some others. Okay? The next behavior is kind of similar to that, but it's actually trying to match someone. It is actually trying to seek the approval of someone in your life. It could be a romantic partner, it could be a friend, it could be a family member whose approval you want, it could be a boss or a coworker. So, what you do when you seek approval in this way is you try to match the other person. Maybe the things that they say, maybe the way they talk, could be the way they dress. You try to match it. Could be some of the beliefs they have, and you start talking like them. You start sharing that you too have some of those same beliefs. You could match the other person in terms of the activities that they do. Well, all of a sudden, you start doing them too. Not because you want to. In fact, sometimes you even wonder, do I even know exactly what I want? Well, you match the other person or the group of people to be just like them, to win their approval. But deep down, what that's really about is you are afraid and you have anxiety about the fact that if you didn't, they might not want you, they might not like you, they might not want to stay connected to you. And the last approval seeking behavior that I'm going to talk about is a difficulty saying no, not wanting to say no, feeling, in fact, like either you're not allowed to say no, the person whose approval you're trying to seek either wouldn't allow you to say no, or they wouldn't like you as much. They wouldn't want to keep you around as much. They wouldn't keep you in the job. All sorts of reasons related to this. Here's what's important to understand, though, about saying no. Actually, most people, aside from parents of young children, expect that the people that are in relationships with them, whether they're personal or professional, that the individual at some point will say no about some things. So if you find yourself just really hating to say no, always wanting to say yes, because you believe that's what will get the approval of the others, you're actually setting yourself for expectations that really most people even wouldn't have of you. Most people understand that saying no is simply a part of relationships on an occasional basis and that it is normal. Now, the other person may want you to say yes all the time, but that doesn't mean that they are expecting you to say yes all the time. So it's really important to look at whether you have what we call in psychology cognitive distortions about this. Thinking distortion, whether you are telling yourself something that you're sure is true, but actually isn't. When you say that the other people either won't allow you to say no, or that you would lose them, or they would not want to be around you anymore if you started saying no, that this would decrease your value, you need to accept that that actually might be cognitive distortion on your part. You may be telling yourself that's true more than it actually is. And so, one way, of course, to test this out is if you think about certain examples in your life where you can say no, you would like to try to start practicing saying no, you can try that on an occasional basis and see what the results are. We call this reality testing. You can test the reality of what you have told yourself, that you're not allowed or that you would lose people. At the end of the day, you probably have an instinct that you do get the right in this world to be yourself. And a lot of times, and too many times, it takes people too long into the lifespan. People are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s sometimes when they finally start realizing some of these life lessons. But if you don't realize it until then, you're going to often carry around anxiety and fear with you. And you know what? Seeking approval as a pattern with others, it is a lot of work. And it takes a toll emotionally. Something to think about. I hope this video got you thinking. You may find some other videos on my channel here at YouTube, Dr. Seth Psychologist, helpful. Think about this, carry some of these positive messages with you, and remember, our lives are here for us to always make daily improvements. All right? Have a good one, everybody.